All right, what's up, podcast listeners? Stuart Anderson here. Buckle up. This episode is so good with PLAN7 coaches Dave and Breanne. So grateful for the time they spent with me. Thankful for PLAN7. They have done so much for me. Duole over the last year is such a great partnership and friendship with them. Not only do they do stuff for us, but what they do in the bicycle community here in Utah is incredible. At the outset of this podcast, I wanted to mention that all PLAN7 services are available to me Duole riders at a 20% discount if you mention this podcast when you connect with Dave and Breanne. So huge discount, and so grateful for them making this team better riders. So you're going to hear from Dave and you're going to hear from Breanne on both training and nutrition, especially when it comes into long events. That's what we focus on here, kind of like wrapping up the season as we go into Lodija. Some nutritional advice on long days to help that stomach from being so upset, and then how to prepare for those long days. There is a lot of good stuff in here that we hope you enjoy. We're going to bring them back again. So much to discuss. They are just awesome coaches and awesome people. So all my thanks to them. Hopefully you enjoy this episode. And that's it. All right. Take care. All right, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Stuart here. Here I am alone with PLAN7. Here, I'll start with this. Breanne is welcome back as we have not had a guest back. Only Dave Sharp has been on twice. So welcome back. We're grateful to have you back. Will you introduce Dave for us? That would be wonderful.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm the same. Nothing's changed. I'm still Breanne, and I'm a dietitian. And I love bikes. This is Dave. He was my coach moving into my career of cycling, and he is the best coach around. If you haven't met him, he really knows his stuff. Could go on and on about all of his accolades and accomplishments and awesomeness, but he's on top of it, all of the races he's won and stuff. He is an incredible bike fitter, and I call him the bike magician. So if you haven't had your bike fit, give us a call and we'll get you in. But gosh, maybe I'm not as good at introductions as I thought. I'll just say he's very handsome. He looks great on a bike. He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff.
What about 9 consecutive years as Utah Crit Series champion? How about that?
That did happen.
That happened. That's pretty awesome.
It's been quite a few years since the last one, but
yeah, and you won it as 45 plus in 2014, was the champion there. And then what about the Frog Hollow Endurance mountain bike race? Record holder for the 6-hour, solo winner on that course. How cool is that?
That was a good one. That's probably one of the experiences that gave me AFib.
Yeah. Great. Perfect.
there's a couple others, and that might be interesting to talk about. I didn't really think about that, but that could be an interesting one to talk about when we're talking about training and effort. Okay.
Yeah, that has come up a few times with our older me Duole riders. So that is good. Well, Breanne and Dave run PLAN7 coaching. Yesterday I picked up one of your riders on the side of the road. Kevin had flats right next to my work and was waiting for his Uber. And so I put his bike in the back of my truck and drove him home.
Nice.
But you guys have everybody's seen the beautiful PLAN7 kits, and you guys are illustrious with coaching many of our teammates and a lot of the great racers here in the state of Utah. So congratulations on your awesome business and awesome company that you built. So you do so much, even just for Utah cycling. So thank you from all of us for your influence and example. So
thanks.
It takes a lot of work. Beautiful daughter. If you haven't followed Dave's cycle adventures with his daughter on his bike, it's worth it. It's worth a follow. So just to watch how cute it is.
Man, that girl is watch out. If we're on the trajectory for some
nice
early bike rides.
Yeah. You'll probably start to see us up on the trails before too long.
Fun.
We're getting some mellow practice, but now she's standing up and doing no hands and
Oh boy.
all right,
Oh,
I
boy.
need to speed this up a little bit so that she feels like she needs to hang on.
Nice. Well, we thought it'd be fun to talk about today race day nutrition, or all things nutrition that we didn't cover last time, as well as this is always kind of an interesting time of year as we like are wrapping up races, moving into Lodija, like how should I be training? What should we be doing? That's kind of all the talk now is I'm tired. Should I train more? Should I go on a longer ride? What should I be doing? Intervals today? Doug was doing intervals. Should I be doing it? So it's everybody is kind of like watching each other and wondering what's the best use of time. So that's kind of where we're going to go today, which I think is awesome. And maybe we can start there, Dave. I mean, everybody is talking about these last 4 or 5 weeks ramping into that big race. What have you seen the most effective riders, racers do at this time of year?
Sure. So, when people are really focused on one big event and they might be plugging in some others along the way versus a rider who just has a series of events throughout the year and then they top it off with a big one like Lodija. Traditionally, that's kind of been the wrap up of the road season. And
Right.
So, it really depends on the person and how they've structured their training for the year. If I'm starting or have returned to work with people year after year, we have a conversation about like what reality is of time that they can spend training. And sometimes that's a pipe dream. Other times people will commit the time. And I know like your crew, you guys have done like 50 miles by 7:15 a.m. and then it's off to the rest of your day. I'm sure you got to go to bed at like 8:30, but
7.
it really is dependent on where people are at. And we get to this time of year and it becomes a really critical point, especially if the training has been ramping up and the volume and the intensity have been ramping up. And then we hit, mid-August and we're like 3 weeks to go, 4 weeks to go. And what do I do? How do I put this together? And you mentioned, I'm really tired. Should I do a long ride? Probably not. We want to allocate those long rides for when we feel pretty solid. And, the way you structure your week, like for example, a lot of folks, their long rides happen Saturday or Sunday or a combination. And so, you can't roll out 15 to 18 hour weeks, week after week with kind of a stagnant structure, like a long ride on Wednesday and then a big ride on Saturday. And then you're trying to do intervals in between and you end up like do your Saturday ride and you're really disappointed because it was super hard. You didn't feel great. You went really slow up the climbs. Your mileage isn't as good as those long rides back in June for the same effort. And so
there's tons of smoke in the air. It's 105 degrees. There's a lot of things to take into consideration.
Yeah.
So,
and so it really becomes that individual situation of if you've been ramping up and you're in August, you're within 4 weeks of the event and you're feeling worked over, it's probably a good time to back it off. And whether you back it off for a day and then you feel great again, or whether it's like, wow, I haven't taken a active recovery week forever.
Right.
And it's like, get out on your mountain bike and spin it around, take it easy. Take an extra day off, do some active recovery, like just small chain ring riding.
what about just to pretend to be someone asking what week out, let's say the goal is September 11 this year, what's the best week for active recovery to kind of let the body reset, and how much do you build after that?
That active recovery week was probably a good one. Let's see, race week, tune-up week. So the third week prior to the event would be a really good one to just lay low. That week before the race week, you're looking at fine-tuning some intensity. You don't really need that much volume, maybe one big volume day. And then week of, you don't want to ride big at all. Intensity is fine, but you want to let all of the work that you've been doing, which is tearing the body down, you're asking your body to do more. And so it needs to figure out a way to do it. And the time that you get better, the time that you get faster, the time that you get stronger is when you rest.
Yeah.
Because then your body has extra energy and it can make all those adaptations and make all those changes. And so, you want to time it right. There's some people who they've got decades of training in their legs and they know what they feel like coming into a race day. And there are some people who can take it right up to the line. But that's a huge amount of experience and background and consistency year after year.
If I can chime in again, as a coached athlete, I remember preparing for big races and longer days that it was always be patient with your resting.
Yeah.
And Stuart, you described but so-and-so's doing this. And what about this big ride? And how many weeks out do I need to do 250 miles in order to be ready for 200 miles? It's don't get Strava syndrome. That's what I call it. Don't look, this is the non-coach advice. Don't look at Strava and assume, because you get overwhelmed and you feel like everyone's doing so much and I only have time for this or this. Let it go. Know what's right for you, your schedule and your timing. But I think Dave makes a good point. Maybe 3 weeks out, that 3 weeks out weekend,
something good in general.
Is your last big ride. And how many hours would you say? Mileage doesn't even count. How many hours would you say 3 weeks out before your rest week?
I think a big ride, your last big ride, you're looking at 7-ish hours. You've kind of pushed yourself past that limit of what your normal digestion feels like, what your normal fatigue feels like. 5-hour rides, 5.5-hour rides, those are big rides. Yeah. And when you take it just a little bit further than that, you start to see the breakdown, right? You start to see that mix that was always dialed for you, all of a sudden your stomach's bugging you. You can't even think about looking at another gel or a chew pack. And you're thinking about the only thing you can think about is the hamburger you're going to eat later. And so, you kind of shift into that mode of, whoa, I've been out here for a long time. And so you can kind of see and anticipate what's going to feel good on the race day. It doesn't hurt to try and hit the amount of time a couple times throughout the season as you prepare, but allocating for a 9, 10, 11-hour ride is pretty challenging for most people, even 100% dedicated people to the sport. That's not an easy one to pull off. And so
you mean not everybody can just take off for 10, 11 hours and leave their family or their kid at home and things?
Just wake up at 3 a.m. You wake up at 4. Easy.
This, we all get paid for ride bikes, right?
So, you want to get that chance to really go over the top. And so if 7 hours doesn't quite do it, I bet you 8.5 would. And so, you want to figure out how you can make that happen. and plan it out, because one of the big things that I see go wrong for people in training is they're like, I need to get myself used to not taking in enough calories, or I need to get myself used to going extra hard. And it's like,
well, you do all that back in like April, May,
as you're kind of structuring things. But the key way to get high quality out of your training is to fuel it properly, is to plan it properly. You can go out for a 2-hour ride, and if you screw it up on hydration and nutrition, best case scenario is you've left some watts on the table. You do that on a 6 to 8 hour training day, and you're calling for a ride home, or you're just like death marching and getting zero quality out of your training.
In sport nutrition, it's anything 3 hours plus.
Mm-hmm.
If you, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but once you hit the 3 hour mark, you can't really get away with not having done proper fueling in the first 2.
And so the best case scenario is you're like leaving some watts on the table. Worst case is you've completely ruined your special 8-hour ride.
And then you have to take 4 days off.
or you keep trying to push through it and you get sick. Right.
Yeah.
And so, having that plan, whether a coach writes the plan for you, or whether you take the time to go back and look at your training logs and be like, oh, that didn't work out so well. I didn't put enough volume in, or I didn't put enough intensity in. And you lay things out all the way down to how you lay out your individual training week, and then how you plan out your individual training days. And it's not just like, I'm going to do 8 by 8 minute tempo on a climb. It's, what time am I going to do that? How am I going to fuel myself beforehand? Do I have light to do a good job? And then how do I change that up? Do I have the right food and drink with me? And, you're planning it out. And then I always go to the point of, I want to do a huge ride. Before I even start, where am I going to stop and refill my bottles? And then it gives me a target to finish those bottles by the time I get to that point.
Nice.
So that I'm, and so I always think, how do I structure my route around what my training is? And some folks are destination rides people, and they have to have a destination. One of my best executors of workouts, he raced pro for a number of years, and I would take my ride up Immigration, and he would be up there he would figure out, how long does it take me for 10 minutes of sub-threshold to get to the top of Immigration. And so he would figure out, he'd do his first one where he thought it would be, and then he would either shorten it or make it longer, and he would do 10-minute repeats.
Nice.
And he didn't need that destination of a ride. He was so focused on his training that he wanted it to be super dialed. And so, you can plan stuff out even at that, but even if you're on a destination, you can plan your route to match up with how your training should look.
So smart.
And so the big thing is planning all the way from the gigantic architecture of a full season to I need to do my base building. I need to do my endurance strength work. I need to do my tempo building. I need to do my threshold build. I need to do my higher intensity, like VO2 and anaerobic. And even if we're not racer types, or we have an event like a 200-mile event, you've got to go pretty dang steady. But then if you're going for the win, you need to somehow be able to try to sprint. Right. And that doesn't mean you should just do like endurance tempo and sprinting work. You need to activate all the energy systems in your training because they all contribute to a big effort.
Let me just say, coaching is helpful in that way, because if a lot of what Dave's saying, you're like, well, I don't know how to structure tempo, but how long is it build, all this stuff. So I first want to say that's our like a nice little plug. Call us, we'll put it together for you. But we are specifically for this conversation only a month out. So Dave's talking long term. Just want to emphasize that your base fitness is where it's at. You can do a little fine tuning over the next few weeks, but you're not going to become a better cyclist, or in my case, if it's like, I need to lose 10 pounds by September, it's like, well, you can't starve yourself and train properly. So let's be realistic on where you're at now and what your realistic goals are for event day.
Yeah. And when you think about like where we're at on the calendar, I mean, the hay is almost all in the barn at this point. It is almost all there. And the one thing that you can do in the next month is ruin all of your preparation. By going too hard, too long. You've got to give yourself the right amount of rest in between hard workouts. And then like we talked about, that third week out, probably an active recovery week. And then that last bit of fine tuning with a long ride, and then keeping your legs rolling and burning up some of the anxious energy leading up to race day.
I call that caged tiger syndrome.
No, that's great. I like that.
Caged tiger.
And rest is sometimes harder than work. You have to eat. We call it active recovery for a reason. Like, you have to consciously take it easy. And as hard as it is, then you get on your bike and go to do even a 5-minute tempo push, and you're like, I'm flying.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic when you let those adaptations happen, and you're at that point of coming into a peak. And I know a lot of people try to peak for this, if it's not your only event of the year. You kind of have to peak for it if you don't want to suffer severely.
You don't want to eat pickles in Afton, half a pizza.
Some people can do it.
I wouldn't.
I've seen it.
Some people can do it.
I've seen it too.
Well,
I don't know how.
Breanne, there is one. I mean, Dave brought up an interesting point, which is I get to that 7.5 hour, point, and I'm like, okay, I am beginning to feel the things that are like, this is not normal. And a lot of the guys that I ride with, they kind of get to that point and they're like, well, I can't eat because I'm sick to my stomach.
Sure.
Drinking is like, okay, well, I'm going to just switch all my calories to drinking. And now you're talking about like 300 calories, per bottle, which is like adding to the globule in your, and it just is like this downward spiral after that 6 hour mark where you're just holding on and like you're sick. Talk about that. Where does that start? How does it end? Any advice?
So I kind of tapped on it earlier, and the biggest thing with endurance sport is that we need to keep in mind that what happens on hours 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 all has to do with what we do in hours 2 and 3. So starting early, if you go into the event well-fueled, good dinner the night before, glycogen stores topped off, have a good breakfast, drink some beet juice and a bottle of mix with your breakfast, you're ready to go at the start line. That first hour, you can be fine. You do want to take in hydration. I know it's cold and dark and we're not stimulated to drink, and there's 45,000 people to navigate through. Right. Most of us realistically don't reach down for our water bottles much. You can get away with that if you go in hydrated. I know there's lots of things like caffeine. I don't want to have to pee, and also, but it's small things that are I would so much rather have to pull over and take a quick Porto stop than have hours 6 and 7 go 5 miles an hour slower because I'm hosed, right?
Yeah.
So think about things like that, where it's so much better to stay on top of things and feel good throughout than to, we're gonna let Dave go and baby woke up. We had our hour.
We knew it.
But he gave most of his spiel anyway. So
Nice.
Maybe we'll even get a celebrity appearance.
Yes.
So to get back to what I was first saying, stay on top of your hydration. And I love that you brought up loading your bottles with calories. I am a big fan, for lack of a better word, of your hydration and your calories being in your bottles, but I'm not a big fan of all of it when we're doing over 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is find the mix that works for you. If you haven't figured it out, figure it out over the next few weeks. Use a couple of big rides and practice. The rule of thumb is 1 to 2 bottles per hour being of mix. Ideally 2 bottles an hour, but at least one of them being of mix. Your electrolyte to calorie load is very, very important. You may know, if you follow PLAN7 at all, we use First Endurance. I'm not plugging this as a sales pitch or anything else. Research wise, is one of the best products on the market because the electrolyte to calorie load is spot on with what our hourly needs are. So as simply as 1 bottle of EFS per hour, you can stay on top of at least your electrolytes and your liquid calorie needs. But that's a minimum. You can do 2 because it's 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate in your liquid per hour. 30 grams would be 1 bottle. And most drinks are actually Scratch, Osmo, except for the ones that are marketed as high calorie drinks, like the 333.
Yeah.
Most are around 100 to 120 calories in a full serving. And the reason that their ratios are the way that they are, I know I get a lot of questions about like, well, if I only do 2 scoops in 2 bottles, and so I can go on and on about different rationale, and I understand a lot of it, but trust the science that we want it dilute in the way that it says on the container.
Yeah.
Because it's in the right ratio to match our bloodstream. What we want is to be intaking our liquid that matches our electrolyte load. If you're a salty sweater, and you know that you're probably a 2 bottles of mix per hour person.
Yeah.
If you get sick of mix, do a bottle of mix, a bottle of water, and make sure that you also have gels, chews, or other electrolytes in your pockets, and try to go through minimum when you're doing a 5+ hour, I have to say it properly, anything over 3 hours, especially 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, you have to take in minimum of 60 grams per hour. That first hour, you can get away with what you have in storage, but if you're not on top of it from hour 2 and onward, that's when hour 5 and 6 suck.
Got it.
Okay. And it's really just discipline and practice and doing it over and over. And I promise you'll feel better just with those simple rules. So go out and try it. Never practice something new on race day.
It's even like practice. I hate to say it's practice, but like
it's totally
we've all done it at hour 5 where you're like, what is happening? Why are things going so poorly right now? And then it's like next time you're like, okay, well, that happened because I was trying to dump fuel on a fire at hour 5 when it should have been happening on hour 2.
And if you really want to think, I mean, it takes a good 30 minutes for something to get through when you ingest it, especially with hydration. Your kidneys are trying to filter, right?
Yes.
Kidneys are working to try and take your liquid, but then it filters and makes urine. But if you're sweating all of your liquid, your kidneys are super confused. And so you have to keep putting those electrolytes with water in and through. If there's too much sugar and not enough electrolyte, those super high calorie bottles, you're getting more, like you said, globules, but that's a great way to think about it. You're putting more solute than you have of solvent through your system, right? If you just think basic chemistry, it's like if it would make sediment at the bottom of your bottle, think of that as how your blood and then into your kidney system. And so then when your kidneys are out of whack, sending messages to your brain to resorb water from your colon, that's where gut upset comes from. Okay, because that's where most of our water is in our colon. And so if our body's like, my kidneys don't have enough water to take on all of this solute, I'm going to pull from other things, and I'm giving your body, your cells a personality. I'm going to pull water from your muscle tissue, your liver tissue, wherever I can get water to get into my kidneys so that I can keep homeostasis. And so if that helps, like, don't even think calories and carbs, just like keep drinking.
Yeah.
You have to maintain that homeostasis within your body. Otherwise it's going to shunt to other systems. And that's where we get brain fog, leg cramps, digestive issues, all those things start to come up. And so when you're on it from hour one, you're much more likely to stay strong, quick, and feel good throughout.
That is so cool. 2 weeks ago at that Mirror Lake Highway race, I got to Evanston, and when I got off, I was like, oh, my back, it hurts. My back it wasn't not my back. It was my kidneys. They were like,
really?
So yes, because the climb was really sweaty. And then when
I heard it was hot and tailwind, which are the biggest components of liquidation.
and like, I wasn't tired. I mean, it was this weird combination of like, my back never hurts when I ride. Why is my back? And then after the race, one of my good friends was like, dude, my kidneys are sore. And I was like, is that a thing? Does that happen? And then I was like, I guarantee that's what happened. So,
and it probably took you like 2-3 days to get right again.
They were sore, and yes, 100%.
Yep. But luckily the human body is super resilient and will figure it out, but you don't want it to be trying to figure it out while you're performing.
No. One of the things that did come up this morning when we were riding is, I've got a guy we ride with who's constantly arguing that he will forego processed calories as long as he can at loadages. So he's like, I'm eating real food instead of the gels and the goos and the things. Is that just personal preference, or is there science behind that?
So both would be the short answer. I've heard both, where I'm going to eat real food until I can only get down gels and chews because they're easy to digest, or the other way around. I'll only take in sport food until I can't anymore, and then I'm grabbing a Snickers bar or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Got it.
So as sciencey or not, my recommendation, not so that it's not a 20-minute conversation, but just to kind of get right to it, have a little of both. I call it security snacks.
Okay.
Keep gels, like, again, practice. But when you've got a musette to pick from, or you pull over and your family's got a cooler for you, whatever, have options. And if you're craving salt and fat, that's when you grab your potato chips.
Take it.
If you're craving hydration, like, that's when you're eating some bites of watermelon. And so think about what you're craving and why, but have then in your pantry of your pockets different options, so that while you're riding, it's, do I want to take in a couple of blocks? Because you've got to be taking in something. Make a goal of every 20 minutes so that you actually have something every 30 minutes. I'm serious, like two to three times an hour, you should be intaking something. And this is on top of your hydration.
Yeah.
Okay. I usually say if I'm going to eat something, I follow it with water. And if I'm just taking a drink of mix, I'm okay to not eat. And I just kind of alternate. But rather than be so black or white on, I'll only do this until I feel like crap. And then how about let's not get to the point of feeling like crap and be realistic. Like, I think, you know what I should do is I'll send you, some of you that have either listened to me or seen me for nutrition. This is like my go-to snack, but I swear it is the magic sauce. Yes. I call it banana sushi. I can send it to you and you can send it out to the team. And you could do it in your own way, but just the idea. Sure, you can go to the Scratch Labs book and make rice balls and do all the fancy stuff. That's wonderful. But I say as simple as get a tortilla or a piece of bread, or if you're gluten-free, whatever carb, flatten it out, put a thin spread of whatever fat sounds good to you, peanut butter, Nutella, avocado, doesn't matter, just some sort of fat, a banana in the middle, roll it up and then cut it into chunks, put it in a zippy, and then have bites of it here and there. So I'll be like, ooh, I want a bite of my banana snack. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, ooh, I want a couple cheese. Like, have fun with it. And then your body can process the more solid food that has fiber and a little fat and protein that take longer to break down. But then the next time you're ingesting, you're getting something that just dissolves in your mouth and gives you immediate energy. And then you're hungry again. So you want to have something more satiating. And then it's not like, oh, shoot, I'm in, I don't know what, Afton, and now I need a piece of pizza because I didn't eat nearly enough the whole time. And this is the only way I'm going to survive. Then you're going to go slow all the way to Jackson and whoops.
Yeah.
Or you have a cast iron stomach and you eat and fuel well and you still have a piece of pizza in Afton. I would puke personally, but I have slow digestion. I know that about myself. I don't break things down fast. So I do a lot of liquid and a lot of quick, easy stuff. I like bananas because it's like, it's real food, but it's gushy.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, which is last year I decided, even if I'm going on a 2-hour ride, a 2.5-hour ride, I treated the ride with the same food and same nutrition as I would. Like, I know I can get by in a 2-hour ride. Like, oh, that's great. But I wouldn't do it. Bring her on. Come on. I want to see her.
Daddy, the baby whisperer, actually, she felt she felt
yes. Okay. Oh boy. If you're tuning in by video, this is as good as it gets. I am very envious. That is so special. I wish I was rocking a baby child.
Oh.
That's awesome.
Right?
Very good. This is so good. We did good. This has been excellent. Is there anything else that you had thought of that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
I've talked on my major things, which are always, I say this to everyone that I work with, and just know, even if you don't want to do a full-blown nutrition plan or coaching, I've done this for many people. Give me a call and we can do a consult and help you plan your feed zones. I'll talk to you about what works for you, what doesn't, the type of person you are, your body size, so we can really dial in how many carbs you need per hour, how many bottles, stuff like that. And you can plan it from each feed zone and even your day before food and stuff. I do that with quite a few people.
And so, I would do that. I mean, if you're listening, do it now so you can practice. And that is so cool. Thank you.
Yes,
Very good.
I'm happy to speak to anyone on that. But I guess the takeaways on both, I'll just recap for Dave. The big takeaways are you're not going to gain fitness nor lose a bunch of weight in these last few weeks. Your goal is to fine tune and really establish a plan. You can have a couple big rides and your in-between stuff is short and intentional. Have that recovery week. And like Dave was saying, if you don't have a specific plan that you're working off of in those few weeks before, sure, mix it up and go through a few different types of workouts on literally 90 minutes. Go out and practice some sprints or just like go up immigration and push it after the switchback and practice some things like that. But you don't need to go out and do stuff that's base building type work. The long rides are for you to execute your plan, and then recover well. We always say work hard, recover harder. On the nutrition side, it's very similar. Practice before. Try not to restrict calories to the point of weight loss, because significant weight loss in the last few weeks is detrimental to your muscular use. All the work that you've done to build to this point, if you go into too much of a calorie deficit to just shed those last few pounds, you're probably going to end up just needing to eat a bunch more the week of, and it's all going to normalize out anyway. So the best thing to do is eat clean. If you drink, that I think the biggest thing is cut that off in the last bit, because those are the types of calories that we don't need. But just think of eating clean, balanced, lots of color, get as much nutrition from your food as possible, and fuel your rides properly. Get a recovery shake or food in within 20 minutes of finishing every one of your rides. It's, seriously, just top off your stores and just think, I'm a machine, fuel it right, and you'll ride much more like a machine.
I love that. I am a machine.
Yeah.
Fuel me like a robot. I'm a robot. I'm riding like a robot.
There's emotion behind food and performance and Strava and all the things, but really, it's numbers, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we have to find what's right for you so that you can be a well-fueled machine. Absolutely.
Nice. Very good. Hey, so if you didn't know, go ahead.
Oh, Dave has one more.
One other thing that I would throw in is you also are riding a machine. And this machine requires you to maintain it, keep it clean. And so we want to, like, we're coming up on 4 weeks out, and bike parts are not easy to come by right now.
No, not even tires.
It gets challenging. And so, a key factor to having your day end is not having tires in good shape. If you're running tubeless, you want to maybe pop the tire off and double check the inside, double check your tubeless tape, add fresh sealant. It's a great time to check your chain now, because in 4 weeks of big mile, and if you've been doing big mile training, you should be going through multiple chains per season. And if you're not, you're wearing out your drivetrain. And so if you put a new chain on it a couple days before, it's not going to work.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because your cassette and your chain rings they're used to a stretched out chain. And so you will have all kinds of drivetrain problems. If you're not mechanically inclined, getting into a bike shop now, so that, there's a little bit of leeway. I know even chains are hard to find.
They are.
And so the more time that you give yourself, the more time that you can make something happen.
Yeah, because you can do everything right with your training and nutrition and be on the side of the road, and then it doesn't matter.
It's true. It's so true.
That's a really good point, Dave. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Stuff like this happens all the time, and people relate, like, I had the worst race ever. And I'm like, okay. Like, for example, me. I like, there's a bunch of events that I like to do, and the ones that I do best at are not super extended climbs. So I had an amazing race in Fruta. There was a 125 mile gravel race, and it gained like 6,500 feet over 125 miles. Awesome. It was moderately technical. And so again, awesome. And I had a little bit of a biomechanical at one point, but I still came out in a great spot at the finish and was really satisfied with my effort overall. I went and did Crusher, and pretty much even if I have a really good time at Crusher, as far as like the finishing time, I'll still say that I had a terrible race. But I was looking super duper forward to Belgian Waffle Ride in San Diego, which was the week after Crusher. And so I suffered through Crusher thinking, all right, I'm putting in my final bit of heat training. I'm putting in my true level of mental suffering, making my body suffer a ton. I'm totally ready. And so I had the bike just perfection, like everything was dialed. Race starts, there's like 3,000 people starting at once. All of the super duper fast gravel pros and top mountain bike pros and former world tour riders are in the front 5 rows, and the rest of us are back a ways. And I was like, this race is going to go crazy right from the start. Spent 5 minutes sprinting my brains out, end up in the front peloton of 200, which is bigger than a Tour de France peloton.
Yeah.
And we're splitting off. And I look down at the power and I'm like, I can't believe I'm in the draft, and I can't believe what I'm having to do just to be in the pack. So you go 11 miles to hit a single track.
It's horrible.
Technical. No, it's a blast. It's so much fun. And so you're duking it out.
I mean, it's amazing
to get the best position and it is single track with a 6-inch curb and a hard 90-degree turn, and then immediately uphill on dirt.
So it's an 11-mile race to this point, essentially.
So and one of my pro cyclocross clients is teammates with Keegan Swenson at Tobin Ortenblad, and their goal was to put Keegan onto the single track first, which it was Alex Howes, Keegan, and Tobin who went on to the single track first. So they did their job. They've made me bleed out my eyeballs. And so I still am in a great position. You know, it just funnels in and you're like walking for a minute to get onto the single track when you're in that big of a group. Make it like 20 miles, still in a great position. And I'm thinking I need to be in a little bit better position. And so I was just letting it stay wide open on some of the descents, tagged a rock, tore my sidewall, unrepaired. And I'm 22 miles in. And there's 113 miles left. And so I try a plug. It would have been worthless to put a tube in it because it would just go through the tear. And so I rode it flat to the aid station like 3 miles later, knowing that there was a velo fix. And I was still in race brain mode, like you can get going again. So after 45 minutes of not racing, I got back on and started going again, but it was way too late. So all of that preparation, like I could be like, well, I had the worst race ever and be down about racing. I just had bad luck. Yeah. And I don't anticipate ever stopping racing. And so I could be super bummed out about it and frustrated, which I always allow myself a gap of time to be bummed and frustrated. And then I'm like, okay, next event, next fun thing that I want to do. And so it's really easy to, go up to Lodija and it's unseasonably cold or it's unseasonably hot and you have 3 flats and you miss your PR time by 20 minutes, right? And that could feel like the worst race ever, but it wasn't your fitness. Your fitness was there. If you had that much of a struggle and you still were super close to your PR, and some folks, I hear people like, I wasted my whole season. And it's like, well, you've got awesome fitness. Why not continue to take out withdrawals, right? And this year we're lucky enough that there's a huge amount of events that have got stacked up into the fall because of last year.
Right.
And there's also all of the things that you can do next year. And so if you put the bike in the garage after loadage is over and you let your fitness go, you're going to lose all those gains. If you stay with a plan and think, okay, what's coming up next year? Like, I've spent all of this time training and preparing. You need to stay on it.
Also, don't we just love riding bikes?
Yeah.
That's kind of why we all do this in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I hope so.
And so you want to, like, obviously you're probably going to need some time off after a big event like that, especially if it was your peak event, but you don't want to let it go too long, because you want to be able to take those gains and add to them. I always relate training to walking up the stairs, right? We do a couple weeks of hard work, we're up a couple stairs. We take an active recovery week and it feels like, oh man, I'm not making any gains, but we're not taking 2 steps back. We're not even taking 1 full step back. And then we add another 2 or 3 weeks of solid training and then an active recovery week. So now we've gone up 7 steps, but we're at 5 from where we were, right? And so it's just that escalating build, and year after year, it makes a difference. And
I love that. It
keeps on adding, and you keep reaping the benefits. If you look back at like how Team Sky had their riders train, they never really turned off that much. Like in the winter, they would have like kind of the end of the season break, but they wanted to keep those guys fine-tuned and pretty close to race fitness all the time. And you don't want to detune yourself. You don't want to turn it. You want to give yourself enough time to mentally recover from a whole bunch of training, to mentally recover from events or your special thing that you wanted to accomplish with your training. But then you want to get back at it. And as soon as you let it drop off, it's going to go away. You're not going to lose everything, but you're going to have to take those steps to get it back.
Yeah, that's great perspective. I love it. That's awesome.
Patience and planning, I think, are, like I said, big architecture of a full season, the sub parts of the season as you do your preparations, each week, and then each training session. And if you do that, it becomes so much easier to not be anxious about training, because you have a plan and you know where you're going, and you don't make compromises. So
you guys are this is very good. We should maybe talk daily, if that would help my
You can't talk to your coach daily.
I know. Before we wrap, and maybe we could save it for another time, Dave, but I would love to hear more about your heart, if that's something that you wanted to get into. Does that take too long? Should we save that for another time, or is that
it does, like, if we want to talk about it in good depth, where it could help give perspective to somebody who might be having issues, I think it's super important. I think if you feel like your heart's doing weird things, or there's something weird with lungs, you shouldn't hesitate. Because when I was finally diagnosed with AFib, I was wearing a monitor that I was supposed to wear for 30 days, and I had it for like 10, and they were like, yep, we've seen all we need to see. You have pretty severe AFib. But when I realized that the symptoms I was feeling, like how it feels to have AFib, I can remember episodes from a decade prior. And I was making it worse every single time. And so, back then I was racing a ridiculous amount per season. And so of course you're going to have a bad day. Right.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, when my power drops off and I feel like I'm on a 13 on a 1 to 10 scale, and I'm like in mud, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm going to have a bad day like that here and there. But I was actually having AFib, and it was building more scar tissue. And so fortunately, when we did diagnose it, I was at a pretty high percentage of, like, there's a certain point where they just won't do the procedure because it's not going to work. It's not going to help. And so fortunately I was at a good point that they felt like it could be successful. And it's 4.5 years yesterday or 2 days ago. And it's been pretty solid. The biomechanical that I mentioned at the race in Fruta caught my attention. And so I had a cardiology appointment today. And we've done blood tests and everything looks good. I'm wearing a monitor again right now. And they're going to do an echocardiogram next week to just look at the structure of my heart. So,
I think
it wasn't like a recurring episode, but it was enough to make me be like, I don't want to mess around with this.
Yeah.
And so if you have some weird health things going on, it's not like it's not like a sign like you're backing off or, you're wussing out or whatever. Like we're a machine and the parts have to work right for us to be able to pedal down the road. And so it's a big deal, but it would be cool to go into a lot more detail and kind of, you can put it out to the team and ask if they have questions or specific things that they wonder about. And, I'm not a doctor, but I can give my experience of like being smart about addressing issues.
Okay. I think it's worth it. I mean, I've been with enough guys on the team who I know that it is an issue.
Yeah.
So, let's do it.
And whether it's atrial fibrillation or any type of any cardiovascular problem, but there's also plenty of things we could really open up into. Some stuff even has nutritional intervention, but it would be probably pretty fun.
Yeah, it could be really interesting.
Nice. Okay, that's it. We already got a plan. Perfect. Great. Hey, as we wrap up, I did want to mention one of those events that Breanne and I are and PLAN7 are part of, which is the 5 Canyons Bike Challenge, September 25th. All I'm really asking, if you're from Duole or whoever is listening, we just want you to participate. Beyond that, if you want to give from your business or whatever, that's fine. Signing up, pay the registration fee, and that money goes towards multiple different charities that help child abuse victims here in the Salt Lake Valley and around the state, which is a huge deal for us and a huge deal for the race organizer, event organizer, as he works hand in hand with those organizations and has seen it firsthand. So it hits close to home. There's I don't remember the percentage, Breanne, but it is high. It's like 1 in 6 children in this state are suffer from some sort of child abuse. And these charities, these groups are combating all sides of that, from my understanding. So sign up. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, well said. I just think it's really cool that it's not just a pigeonhole, all your money goes here. The goal is to put an end to child abuse. And I think Greg makes a good point. That's the organizer, that when we address a situation that is very prevalent and is hard to talk about, but there are organizations out there that, like, unfortunately, child abuse leads to a lot of other things that also have organizations that help. But the goal of this organization is to nip it early and get kids into safe places and fix the situation. So, like I said, it's close to the heart for many. And even if it's not, what a cool cause. And like we talked about, you can use your fitness that you've gained all season. It's beautiful. If you've ever had the goal of riding all 5 canyons in one day, this is fully supported. It's super cool. You don't have to race it. You just ride it. And if you get 2 canyons in, you can. There's Strava stuff. But if you get 2 canyons
I plan on winning. So whatever there is to win.
I love winning fondos. It's like the best.
Winning fondo.
We used to say that on our team. Like, we're gonna go and win that fondo. Like, we're gonna use pace lines.
That's fun.
Get after that fondo and win. No, but it's a great day. There's a big festival the day before, and good food and stuff the whole time. And if you want, I'm doing a couple. You could even be good Logan and Jackson prep. My climbing series. You guys are like already done with your ride at 6 a.m. when I start. I'm always seeing Duole people coming down the canyon and still waking up. The sun's not out. I don't understand you guys. But if anyone likes 6 a.m. late rollout, this won't air before tomorrow's Mill Creek. But the last 2 weeks of August are Big Cottonwood and Little Cottonwood. So if those are demons of yours, I like to say I'm pretty good at climbing hills, and I have some tips, and I'll give you some guidance, and you can pick my brain as we ride up strenuous mountains. So,
and that's Thursday morning, 6 a.m. at 3 Cups and Holiday. That's where they meet. Yep. Okay. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. This is always
great.
Always fun chat.
And look at that. If you're watching, such a special little person. She's so sweet.
Oh, thank you.
She's just waking up.
She's awake. Oh, there's a groggy bee. Bee, can you say hi? Hi, Bee. Hi.
I remember you when I was on my bike the other day.
Yeah, can you give him high fives?
High fives.
Yeah. There you go. Can you do bones?
Have fun on your bike ride, Bee.
Bones. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You're awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya.
Bye-bye.